Hello. Thanks for joining me. The anniversary. Is that the word you use? When we think of the date someone died, most, not everyone, most commemorate it in some way. And there's a lot of terms that are used. Some ones might say it's the anniversary of. Others say the Angelversary. I wonder, is there a word you use? And over time, has that language shifted? The first year, it might feel right to say one thing or think one thing. As time goes on, has that changed or shifted for you? And it's not unusual to change our thoughts and how things feel. Now, it's kind of funny because the day I'm recording this, it's December 13th. And for the last week or so, I've had a few conversations with people. And of course, because we're dealing with grief, we talk about when that date might be. And I've mentioned to several people that today was 13 years since my son died of suicide. That's wrong. It's not. He died on December 17th. This year, that will be on Sunday. That's 4 days from now. It was muddled thinking. It was conflating thoughts. It's not unusual for many of us to have some feelings that we might not expect, for our thoughts to be a little bit fuzzier than normal. Lately, I've had a lot of fuzzy thoughts. What I ask for is grace as we think about these things, not to judge ourselves. Keep a sense of humor. It helps. It helps. Now, I completely consider myself healed. I feel great most of the time. And even when I think about this date coming up, and I'm not sure what language I'm using, it doesn't bring the sort of stress and anxiety that it once did. I've been thinking about it, sure. In fact, the other day at the Y, because I teach a little class down there in the morning, this lovely woman stopped to talk to me about some stressors that were going on in her life. And she told me that she had, when she was very young, she'd been divorced, and then she married a wonderful man and was widowed, and how different these grief experiences were, but both very profound. The conversation continued, and she was asking if I'd ever had a profound grief experience and what that might have been like. And I told her, too, that the date was imminent. What was going on with my thoughts? Apparently, they were a little mixed up. It's not unusual. And still, that language has changed. When I think of an anniversary, I think about things like our wedding anniversary. For us, it's not the huge deal you might think it is, but it's a celebration, isn't it? It's something we want to acknowledge and hold dear to our hearts. Certainly that's true for our wedding anniversary, for my eldest son, for other people when they tell me they have their anniversary. At the same time, I think that we don't use that language for all significant dates. I don't use the word anniversary for when my three sons graduated from high school, when they left home, when the eldest came back from Iraq. I don't use that language. It doesn't mean that we're not honoring the date. It may mean it doesn't have the same presence in our heart and our mind, or something different. I kind of like some of the language that says Angelversary. At the same time, because that feels as though it's, for me, it feels as though I'm honoring the day he went to the other side. He transitioned. Because in my world, in my mind, in my heart, in every bit of my being, I know and trust that my son is fine. my sorrow, my grief came from him being away from me physically on the very human level, that I can't reach out and touch him, that I can't pour him a cup of coffee and ask him to sit down next to me. Our connection is very different now, isn't it? Not less, but different. And so I don't think so much as death being the end of everything. You've often heard me use the language of going through one door to another space. And we've even talked about what is the sign over that door? Is it exit or is it entrance? And maybe it's the same thing. I feel like it is. So for me, Angelversary feels better. I respect the day, but even that has changed very much. In the very beginning, it was heartbreaking to contemplate. And the first year, I didn't spend with family or friends. My husband was working, which was a wonderful thing for him, surrounded by the men and women at the fire department. They took really good care of him. A few friends had asked if I wanted to spend time with them, and I appreciated the thought, but it didn't feel right. And a very lovely woman that I'd never met in person, but we'd talked to many times by phone and email, asked me if I would meet her for lunch. It was about 45 minutes away, and so we met for lunch, and we stayed and we talked for hours and hours. She had lost her stepson to suicide, and of course I had lost my son to suicide, and we spent hours talking about where we were on our journey. She was much further down the path, and how supporting others had been so very healing for both of us. We'd probably still be at that restaurant, except they needed to serve dinner and actually needed our table. It was a day of acknowledgement. And I sort of feel like that might be the language. How about for you? Have you noticed a shift, a change, whether it's coming up to that first date for you, whether you're 87 years down the road, somewhere in between? Has your language changed? Have your thoughts and feelings around this date changed? I have spoken before that sometimes I'm not even aware that the date is coming up because I can be doing other things. And when the date comes, I might realize, oh, I've been a little out of sorts. Maybe I've been forgetful or muddled or just out of sorts in general, not really having a specific thought or feeling to attach. Does that happen to you? And when the date comes, it's usually like an awareness. Oh, maybe that's what it's about. It's not unusual. It's not unusual. How about you? When I work with clients, when I'm training coaches, we talk about these things a lot because there's often so much fear and worry about significant days, especially the day of death coming up. There'll be incredible stress and worry about how am I going to feel? How am I going to get through it? What do I do? And of course, I always encourage making a plan. Often what we feel and realize afterwards is that the anticipation is quite often much worse than the actual day. Many people will tell me that the day itself is rather anticlimactic. And is that okay with you? What has been your experience? What are your thoughts about this? What are your feelings? Because the truth is, it's not unusual for us to have a set of thoughts and for our emotions to be taking a different path altogether. I encourage grace around this. Let go of the judgment. Trust yourself to feel what you do and know that that's okay. And so again, I invite you, please share. Is there language that you once used that no longer feels like it's right for you? Or does it feel the same and even stronger? Have your feelings around this state shifted? I hope they've become softer. For me, it certainly has. even though I've had very muddled thoughts. And I apologize and appreciate those who are very kind and gentle to me and will have a laugh with me that I was confusing things. And that's okay. It's part of our grief experience. Please share. Do you use different language? Do you do something specific to honor that date, that event? Last weekend, we were up in Milwaukee visiting family, and that's where we lived when our son died. And so, of course, he's buried there. And we don't go to the cemetery. For so many people, that's a sacred place. And I absolutely respect that. For us, it's not. It's a place where his ashes reside. He's with us in very different ways. Again, there's not a right or wrong way. It's about what is right for you, for your heart, and that may shift and change every year, maybe more often. What's right for you? I'd love to hear from you. Please share below, because when we share, we help others to find their way, sort of try on thoughts and discover what feels right for them. I'm Sandy Walden, your Master Grief Coach. I wish you a day of gentle peace and healing. Namaste.